Hi everyone, I'm so happy that you're here to join me for the Way of the Animal podcast. So today's podcast idea came from a friend of ours, and I think the idea is that it's why do we overcomplicate things?
Yes, it's the idea of the keep it simple or KISS.
Keep it simple, silly?
Keep it super simple.
Keep it super simple. Yeah, because we have a habit of making things into something bigger than they are, and we also have a habit of doing things in a way that can be more complicated than they need to be.
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's in that ballpark of overthinking and overanalyzing, isn't it?
Yeah, and almost overdoing. Like what came up there was overdoing. It's like you just, it's just what's popped into my mind, which is something that comes up with me quite a lot with overcomplicating things, is when I've got myself into a hole, say mentally I'm struggling with something, I make it into this big mountain of a way that I have to get out. Like it's so big that the way I have to get out of whatever I've got myself into, I can't think of an example.
Yeah, but it's such a big step.
That I feel like it's going to be, I have to climb this massive mountain to also get myself out of where I am. But actually, usually it's just some little simple steps. And
it's interesting because that brings me to somewhere I wasn't thinking that we were going to go. But that saying of, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And whatever you're doing in life, if you break it down into little steps, it's really easy. And it's so easy to look at the big picture, which is great to look at the big picture. But then to think, how can I do that? But all you need to do is just take the first little step. So if I do this, well, then I can do that, then I can do that, then I can do that, then I can do the big thing.
Yeah. And I don't know, we're a little bit off of, I think, what our friend was suggesting, and I know we're going to get onto it, but it was interesting. I did a meditation. I participated in a meditation.
I don't know what the correct term is.
No, I don't know either. I meditated.
There you go.
With a guided meditation. And it was about things being easy. So we didn't know this wasn't the right topic. We do now. About things being easy and about how it's not always an object or a destination that you're looking for. Sometimes it's just a feeling. And when it's a feeling that you're looking for, then it's already within you, so you can create the feeling. Therefore, you're already at your destination you feel like you can't get to. So it's like this thing of making it easy, because it's easy when you realize that it's within you that you find your destination and your outcome.
I think definitely for feelings and things like that and emotional side, a lot of that is internal already there. So your journey doesn't need to go anywhere because you're already there.
But also I think it's like there's a whole host of topics, because I was talking with another friend today and we were talking about getting caught up in the external dramas that are going on around you and realizing that none of that is really important. What's important is your life and the way you're living it.
Yeah.
So
I have a slight question.
Uh-huh.
Do you think women tend to overcomplicate it more than men?
We're going there, are we? I know our other friend in Florida,
it's just an observation,
would love this, but I wish he was here to join in for this bit. He would love it.
Yeah, I'm going to tell everyone that he told me to say that.
Okay, yeah.
Blame him. Let's throw him under the bus.
Excellent. Okay.
Generally, I think men tend to be a bit more direct and a bit less overthinking.
So I think it's a whole other podcast if we're going to get into masculine and feminine. Sure. I think it's actually a very interesting topic.
Definitely.
Because there are differences even just physically and beyond. I know simply physically, but I mean as in women are very cyclical in monthly cycles, whereas men are 24-hour cycles. You know, it's a whole... So the way that we perceive the world comes through how we are feeling. Therefore, all our processes and the way we deal with life is slightly different. So we perceive our life differently. So yeah, perhaps the way that the women's hormones work, the woman, like I'm not one.
I'm not one of those women.
I'm not one of those women, but I am. I'm a great overthinker. I'm going to make it positive. I'm a great overthinker, and I am learning to let that go.
But like at times it's a good thing, because we can go to perform a task, whether it's in the garden or something with cows at work or something, and I just start doing. And well, you know, if you think about it, if you did it like this, it would be much better. And I'm already halfway through doing.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if that though might be just more personal between me and you. So it's very interesting. Like I know that there'll be people that are similar in their way of approaching things, but I like to plan, and I initially it used to be because I like to control things, but now I like to plan because I like to do it in what I perceive as the best, the most efficient and simplest way. And simplest way takes us back to the topic. I want it to go, like, I don't want it to go well. I want it to be a simple process.
Yeah.
So if I think through the process all the way to the end, I have a way of envisioning how it could be.
It's very interesting because the way I deal with, honestly, everything in life is I just take that first step and I divert and adapt as the next step comes, and I realize that the first step was actually a mistake and I need to go over there. And, like, that's the way I tend to process things. Mainly, I think, because otherwise I sit and think about it. I don't actually get round to the doing of it.
I was going to say that the problem can be with the thinking too much is you end up overcomplicating it, and then, you know, in grander things than just simple tasks like doing something in the garden, you can become stuck and fearful of doing the thing you've thought so much about because it becomes so big.
Yeah.
And that's that overcomplicating something that actually, if you just took the first step, it's quite simple and you make your way through it. That's
it. So, yeah, the overcomplicating is helpful at some times, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not actually setting out to overcomplicate it. I'm actually setting out to simplify it by working my way through it. And, you know, for me, it's directly linked to my anxiety. So obviously, if I work my way through it, then I feel like I'm prepared.
Yeah.
And then I don't get triggered by something but like, you can never prepare for life. I've realized a long time ago, but I still do it a bit. But you can't prepare for life.
20 years with me, I think you should realize that nothing can be planned.
Yes. So I'm in the process. It's a long process. And it's not because I've overcomplicated it. It's just a long process of letting that go. And yeah, I can think through it, but I now will be like, well, it's just this, and then we're done. And I sort of close the book. I stop looking at it.
Yeah.
Because certainly it doesn't help the anxiety, because I end up focusing so much on it, I get anxious. And we've talked about, you know, focusing on the future and how you're not in the present moment then. And so I'll worry about it all the way up to the point when it's done.
And so that's interesting. Do you run the risk of, when you're planning things and when you're trying to work out the best, getting into a loop of looking at the things that could go wrong?
Yeah, I definitely look at all the outcomes that could be possible. Now I feel that I am better at not focusing on the problems.
Yeah.
But quite often in life, you do end up focusing on the problems, and then when you do that, you're stuck in that energy of the problem. And I think it's the Albert Einstein quote, where you can't solve a problem from the energy you created it in. Something like that.
I think it is something like that. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea.
That's where you get stuck in a problem.
Yeah. So you can get stuck in the problem. So I can get stuck in what's wrong.
Yeah.
And not be able to
move on to the right.
Or it's not even move on to the right, just like think of solutions.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting one. Yeah. The sort of finding a problem and just being so focused on, oh my God, this is a problem. You're not thinking, well, actually, there's the solution.
Well, it's like, I mean, taking it to the animals, you know, with your dogs, your dog is, well, there's loads of different examples, and I've used the jumping up one before, you know, your dog's jumping up. Well, you focus on the fact that they're jumping up, you're looking at them jumping up, you're annoyed at them jumping up. None of that energy is actually going to solve the problem.
Yeah, you're getting all worked up about it, and it's not in the slightest bit helpful to the situation.
And we all know that the dogs can read into that, so they're just, it's, you know, it's not helpful. So it's very easy with the animals when you see they have a problem, even when they're sick or they're struggling, and you focus on how they're feeling in that moment, and you're not actually helping them to move beyond that. You know, it's like we can end up, if they have something that's going on that's a problem, that they're barking at people or whatever, we can end up holding them. It's like a holding pattern in that pattern of repeated behavior, because we expect it, we're focusing on it, we're worried that this is going to get worse. And of course, it tends to, because we're focused on the problem, we're not creating solutions, we're coming at it with the energy of the problem, not the energy of the solution. You know, it's a whole... It's a whole mess, I would say, when you get into that. When you get into, and it's same with kids and people and things. You know, it's
it
like
definitely is.
You bring in that energy.
It's interesting. I'm thinking about the keeping it simple and overcomplicating things, and I've got a great example from at work today. There was we've got a young guy that works with us, and he was putting some seed in the ground. So he had one tractor with a seeder on the back of it, which is big and cumbersome. He had another tractor with like a big hopper on the back that would fill him up with seed when he'd run out. It ended up being too wet in the field, so he needed to come back. So he had to get his way from the field back to the main ranch.
I really want to interrupt. This is like that boat with the fox and the chicken and the...
It is a little bit like that. But he didn't need to bring everything back. Everything could stay out there. They're all machines that are good to stay outside, even if it rains or whatever. So everything could stay there. Now, his choices were disconnect the seeder, which would have been a big rigmarole, drive back with the seeder, which is really big and wide for going through some of the gates. Someone else may have taken out one of the gates with it. So, not me, I want to point out. This time. So he could have done that, or he could have driven back the tractor that had the big hopper on the back, or he could have pulled a single pin out and driven the tractor that the hopper was hooked up to back, and just left the hopper sitting out there in the field. And it was one little pin, and that's all. He brought the seeder back.
Oh, wow. Interesting choice.
Yeah, we were debating which choice he was going to make. We're like, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. But we know how we would do it.
Well, as long as he didn't take any more gate posts.
Not that I'm aware of.
Excellent.
So it didn't matter. He got the job done. It definitely wasn't the simplest way, but there was some sort of blindness to seeing.
I think there's also that
the solution.
That thing is, you know, everyone has different solutions. So we've known that we have worked together like 24/7 for years and years.
And my way's always right.
It's really interesting. We'll come to the same task, and you'll start doing it a completely different way from what,
and not even close.
No, and initially, it would almost anger me. You'd have an emotional response of, you're doing it wrong. And then because it kept happening.
I kept doing it wrong.
No, I began to realize that it wasn't you doing it wrong. You were just doing it your way, and it was unexpected. So now, quite often, I'd be like, oh, and you're like, what's wrong? No, you totally approached this in a way that I wasn't expecting. And now I just like, well, that's it. That's my reaction. We carry on. I do it your way and whatever. Yeah. But it's really interesting how we approach this
it is task. And I don't know what the difference is, masculine, feminine, maybe again, I don't know, just the way our problem solving brains work, because I wouldn't say your ways were any worse than mine or better than mine. I don't think there was there was differences, and quite significant differences,
But they got the same task done. Yeah. It was just in a different way.
There are certain ones that, if it's a very physical task, I rely on brute strength a bit more, whereas you're more calculating about how you do it because you don't have as much brute strength.
I always, and I've noticed sometimes when you outthink your brute strength, so you get to the stage, oh no, I can't just do that. Then it's like really easy for me to problem solve that because I've done that my whole life. It's like, oh, you're having a problem with not being strong enough? I've got a solution.
That's it. Yeah.
So yeah, it just shows you how different people think differently.
I think that's the interesting thing about, because I know what our friend was saying was that people complicate things a lot. And I don't know. There's definitely a degree of overthinking and overcomplicating tasks. But honestly, I think there's a lot of just not seeing the easier path.
Who says it's easier?
Okay, not fair point. Seeing one path and not seeing the others.
Yeah. Do you think sometimes that's just like fear? Do you think there's emotions that, your fear, your panic, and you just like, this is the only way?
Yep. And so here's an interesting, very unrelated, but when I write, because I'm dyslexic, I will come across a word I don't know how to spell. I can restructure the sentence just to avoid using that word.
Yeah.
And so it's the same sort of thing. It's the avoiding a difficult thing by going a different route.
And it's like, because we watch overlanding sort of YouTube channels sometimes. What's come to mind is sometimes they'll come across an obstacle and they're sort of in the middle of it by the time they realise it's a problem.
Yeah.
Which is quite often a thing when you're...
I do that all the time.
Yes, when with life is... You don't realise it's a problem until you're absolutely bogged down in the middle of it. And I think sometimes that's when it's hard to see the solution. And I've seen it with you when you've maybe let me know that you're having a problem with something. And because I'm not in the middle of the problem, sometimes I bring a fresh perspective, and it's not even the answer that you use, but it opens up your mind again to, oh, there's another possibility, and then I've got it.
That's back to the Einstein quote again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very true, and we've definitely experienced that I've got kind of bogged down in something because I can't see a way out. Not being able to see the wood for the trees sort of thing. Yeah.
But it's when you're in the middle of it. It's almost, I feel like there's almost like a primal effect. You're actually in that almost a bit of fear of, oh no, this is not good. I can't see my way out of this.
I was just stubborn.
Yeah, sure, stubborn.
I'm going to make this way work.
But I feel like it's like a primal thing. And it is, you end up like hitting your head against a block of it.
I'm going to break this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you tend to break it. You're right.
I showed it.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's interesting because it works. The keeping it simple, I think, goes through everything in life and links back to the animals. And especially, I think about a lot because I've got new pup, training him, and really simple training. Like his recall is phenomenal. How old is he?
14 weeks or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And his recall, he can be playing with another dog and I can give one whistle and he comes running. Which, for a pup that age, when it's mid-game, like that's pretty... But it was really simple. Like there was no big complicated trainings or anything like that. And
I think we have the power of repetition.
Yes, we're fortunate because we've done it a few times.
I mean, it has been a big gap between 10 years between this one and the last. But I feel in that time we have journeyed so far with how we've learnt how to create a relationship with our animals that I mean, I'm just waiting for the all to just turn into pieces because it's amazing how good he is.
But then I think you're right that we did come on a journey and we've changed the way we approach things, because when you trained, because you primarily did train Dreesh, our gun dog, you used shaping behavior. Is that the
shaping
term you would use?
Yeah.
So Well, you can describe it better than me, in case someone doesn't know how it is.
Well, it was a really interesting journey and I really enjoyed it. And Dreesh was our first dog that was not a border collie, that I wasn't training to work sheep. So it was a really interesting journey, and he is very food driven. So I knew what the reward was, and it doesn't matter what the reward is as long as they're rewarded in some way. Shaping, I used it for doing, because obviously he's going to retrieve. So I was using it to sit in the sitting room and train a really good retrieve with I don't know if you've seen them, the gun dog dummies. They're sort of a specific thing that they use for the gun dogs, and what you want them to do is hold them until you're ready to take them type thing, and that's the whole thing. So the shaping I used was, he looked at the dummy that was sitting in the middle of the floor. He got a treat. He went over to look a bit closer. He got another treat. And so it was, you show me a behaviour and I'll let you know it's the right behaviour. And it was just amazing because dogs being really clever, he realised, okay, when I interact with this, I get a treat. And then, it progressed and progressed. And it was just like, I just do little short sessions of just putting the dummy in the middle of the room. And then it got to the stage, you'd go and pick it up. And
that's it. You're constantly moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
So to start with him just looking at it, good job.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, looking at it's not enough. You have to try something different.
And obviously, over a number of sessions, this progressed. And, to the stage where he would run and get the dummy, pick it up, bring it to me, hold on to it until I put my hand out. Then he would place it in my hand and then he'd get the treat. And, there was a whole process to get there.
Yeah.
And it allowed then, when we did agility training with him, a whole other host of shaping behaviours, and it's lovely. So now you're thinking about talking about what he does now. Is you went to feeding his food, and did you say to him, "What can you do?"
Yeah.
You said what? And you just said, "What can you do?" Just one day, holding this bowl of food, and he said, "What can you do?" And he just put his paw in the air, like doing a high five. I'm actually doing it, but you can't see it. So, and that's his. Then we haven't even we now call that "What can you do?"
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then it's great because you can develop it either way. You can get him to do a high five, or if you don't, offer your hand up for a high five and keep asking him. He just holds his hand up like he's waiting to ask a question in class.
So now you can say as well, "Who's this for?" with his food, and he'll put his paw. But what was really interesting, we're getting off topic, but what was really interesting was you were trying to teach Callan the new puppy paw.
Yep.
And you were sort of teaching him to do it, whatever, and Dreesh did it next to him, and he looked over at Dreesh, is this right?
Yep.
Yeah. He looked over at Dreesh, watched what he did, and did the same thing.
Yep.
And so then he got rewarded. So that was it. That was almost shaping by learning from the other dog.
Yeah. And there's a big thing with teaching other dogs with other dogs. Yeah, they can learn from each other.
The sheepdogs, we've found it very handy with, one of the things you want the sheepdog to do is run out wide and far. And generally younger dogs are a bit more nervous about that. If you've got an older dog that they can just kind of follow along with, it tends to draw them out and allow them to come out a bit further. So it's fun.
We're kind of drifting off the topic of keeping it simple, but that's the thing though. Rather than overcomplicating the training, is just keeping it really, really simple.
Yeah, and just little steps and short sessions and just breaking it down. And I think sometimes we get so stuck on the big picture that we don't realise that we can just do the little steps, and that gets us to the big picture. And it's certainly, recently I've been finding things quite tough and realising that the first step is just getting myself feeling better about it all.
Yep.
And then I can make the next step, and it's just...
That's it. And it's really interesting the different tacts we take on problem solving and completing tasks. And I notice myself, like, I love a deadline.
Yes, you do. It drives me insane.
But part of loving a deadline is overthinking. So if it's doing tax returns or doing our immigration papers, which I need to do for coming to Canada, I'll sit and think about it and look at it and think about it and look at it and think about it some more. And all that time, I'm building it into a bigger thing than it is. I'm making it more complicated and this big, daunting. And every time I look at it and don't do anything, but just think about it, I build it just bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's like that big mountain I talked about.
And it becomes this big mountain. And then the great thing with the deadline is, like, oh crap, I actually have to do it. And then you do it, it's like it takes you 5 minutes to do it. Like, oh, that was really simple. I should have just done that. But it's interesting in life how many things we put off because they're bigger tasks.
Or they seem bigger
Or they seem bigger tasks.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. It just seems unsurmountable.
Yeah.
And then when you do it, it's like, why did I make such a big deal about this?
I try to hold to the idea that anything that comes up, I can deal with and I can solve. And that's why I just tend to get started and work it out as I go along, because I'm like, well, it's fine. Whatever hiccups I hit on the way, I'll just deal with and move on to the next thing. But I do fall victim to the overthinking and overcomplicating things from time to time.
Need to do a bit of both.
Yeah.
Like it's like
good to plan.
You need to do like a cursory plan, but not overthink it.
I think it's better to just go on and do than plan. So if you're not going to plan, that's fine. But if you're going to plan, make sure you do as well.
Yeah. I think it's that whole thing we were talking about, how sometimes you can just get stuck.
Yeah.
Because in your mind, everything seems too much.
Yep.
And realizing that it is just about taking a little step. I think we were talking about the fear. That was it. And
fear.
So
fear holding you back.
What's stopping you from doing things is quite often the fear. And the fear is related to the stories you've created about whatever you're about to do.
Yeah.
And really, when it comes down to it, if you just start doing it bit by bit, task by task, it's not as big as you perceived.
Exactly. That's it. And realistically, almost everything in life, if you break it down into small enough steps, is pretty easy to handle.
Yeah. Like,
you just need to break it down into small steps.
And I think it's anyone who's worked with animals know as well that when you're training or working with or helping them, rehabbing them through something they're struggling with, break it right down.
That's an interesting one, training. Because, and I see this a lot. So the manager where we work and I have very different styles with working with the other members of staff and giving them training and guidance. He breaks it down into really simple little steps. Do this, then do this, then do this. And that's how he just breadcrumb feeds them. I like to say, do this because, and then I elaborate the whole thing. Because I found some people, some people it works great just giving them the little breadcrumbs and they don't want to have to think about the bigger picture. But other people, they don't understand why they're doing this. And if you explain to them why, when it invariably doesn't quite go according to plan or it doesn't happen the way you thought it would do, they know, okay, well, I'm doing this because of this, but this has happened. So if I do that, then that'll work the same way. So it kind of helps them problem solve.
I almost feel like it's a new thing with me. I don't know, but I've really noticed that if I know why or how something works, and then I am able to sort of laterally think my way through it. Whereas before I would have panicked because I don't know how to work my way through it. The lateral thinking didn't come as easy. Yep. But I feel like if I understand why or how it is how it is. We were trying to calculate dry matter and stuff for cattle, and I hadn't been there for the initial conversation, and I was there for the other part, and I was like, I did not understand the why or how this was going on. So,
but that's interesting, really because where you came into that, it made no sense to you. No. But if I'd said, okay, so what we're doing is we're putting them into this area that we're not sure how big to make it. we're working out how much each one of them needs to eat of the grass that's in the ground.
But I actually understood that was the process you were doing.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why the calculations were so crazy.
You didn't understand all the little steps.
Yeah, I hadn't been there for how you're figuring out that. So Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's like, I'm happier knowing. So if, say there's a problem with a vehicle, and I'm watching a program where someone's broken down and they've got a problem with their vehicle, and it's like, that part does this, and that's why it's a problem, and it's like, okay. And
I understand how that
it
works.
doesn't matter, but I don't know, it seems to be a much more later life thing. I'm really focused on getting to know why things work the way they work and how they work. I
must be rubbing off on you.
I think it is. I think it's a you thing, because you love to know how things work, but it's almost getting to the stage. I feel like it allows more independence in your life if you know how things work.
So a lot of my knowing how things work comes from the whole place of, I can't rely on other people. Other people don't get things done. So if I know how everything works, well, you know what? I can just do everything.
Laughing at that meme I sent you.
Yes.
There's a meme, and it was like, me. I need more help. Also me. No, not that way. I'll just do it myself.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah, we kind of got off topic at the end there. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the feedback from our friend, because there might be a part 2 to this. If
there's
not hit the nail on the head as to what they were bringing forwards there. So yeah.
He just needs to come and tell us what he was thinking.
Yeah, well, that's it. If he's not happy, if you're not happy with this, then
you know what you need to do.
You know what you need to do. You can come and join us.
Yeah.
Virtually, obviously. You don't need to actually travel all the way up here from Florida. That's quite a trip just for a podcast.
But you could.
You're more than welcome. But so yeah, interesting topic. It's taken us on quite a journey. But
it is.
It's because it's like, I think you said before we recorded, I don't think you said in the recording, about how it just affects everything in your whole life when you overcomplicate things. Like, it's everything.
Everything. Yeah. Your relationships, relationships. I mean, there's a great one for especially when you're young and just starting out in a relationship. The amount of overthinking you do is ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, they said that. What do you think they meant by when? Well, maybe they just meant what they said. Like, oh my God.
Mountains out of molehills.
Mountains out of molehills.
I feel like that's what it hits into, is that we make mountains out of molehills.
Yeah. Overthinking.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me. That was really interesting.
It was interesting.
It went all over the place, but it was great.